Hello, James Moffitt here. Please go to parentingadultchildren.org website and sign up for a free membership and leave a review for this episode. If you have any requests for future topics, send me an email at talkpac@proton.me. That's talkpac@proton.me. Please share this podcast with your friends and family. Now for today's guest interview.
Welcome to the podcast ABCs of Parenting Adult Children. Please join us as we discuss parenting adult children and the unique struggles that it comes along with.
Hello and welcome to ABCs of Parenting Adult Children podcast. My name is James Moffitt and I will be your host. Today we have a special guest, John Chinaka. I guess I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Absolutely.
All right, John Chinaka is going to be here. John, how are you doing?
Doing great, James. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Do me a favor and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Okay. John Chinaka, retired. Jane and I have been retired for about 15 years, and we're former teachers, educators. I was a counselor for 25 years in the public schools and also had a private marriage and family counseling practice. Done lots of things. Have two wonderful sons that are grown. They're in their 50s. So we have grandchildren, 3 grandchildren.
Wonderful.
We live in the Myrtle Beach area, South Carolina.
We live very close to each other. That's interesting.
You're in
Goose Creek.
Goose Creek. That's right.
Yeah, just outside of North Charleston.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, I come to Surfside once a month to play poker.
Okay. Well, you're not far away. Yeah, we're going down to Charleston for our 55th wedding anniversary. That'll be on the first day of spring, March 12th.
Okay. Well, we'll have to hook up sometime in person.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
So tell us a little bit about your parenting story.
Jane and I are personal parenting and so on. We raised our children in Pennsylvania, the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. And after Jane was teaching for a little while, we decided to have our children. And so we had 2 boys. They're about 2 years apart. And we were very fortunate. We lived in the mountains of Pennsylvania. And I found a house that was surrounded by 10,000 acres of woods. We had 1 acre, and it was right in the middle of the 10,000 acres.
Wow.
So it was like a little house on the prairie, literally, because the guy who owned all the woods and so on, he said, you can take all the wood you want, if it's dead and so on, use it for a fireplace and for heating your house. And, you enjoy the woods just like yourself. It used to be former farmland. You'll see farm rows and bottles will be in there and all kinds of things. And you can just, enjoy the land and so on, just don't ruin it. So we said, oh, that's great. So basically our kids were raised in that kind of environment. We had a huge garden. We had chickens. We had animals of all sorts. I'm only saying this because a lot of the books that we're doing now in our retirement years have to do with our children and growing up in that kind of environment. And we wanted to make sure the books were wholesome, they taught ethical and moral values, and that they were beautifully illustrated. And so a lot of the books that we have done have come from that background. And so we raised the kids there until they were about 12. The oldest one was 12. We got a chance to move down to South Carolina, and both of us teaching. Jane was home during all that time of raising the kids in Pennsylvania. We moved down to South Carolina and started both teaching and being involved in our professional work as educators.
Did y'all homeschool?
No, we did not. The kids did go to regular public school when we were in Pennsylvania, but we got involved in a lot of colonial things. The Quiet Valley Farm Museum is there, and we started to learn all kinds of colonial traits and tasks and skills, and so we belonged to that environment. So we chopped our own wood, we raised our own plants, our own food, had an orchard, we raised animals, we kind of made butter and candles,
right,
and all kinds of stuff. So we came up very close to the land and using the land and everything.
What kind of sound?
Yeah, it was a lot like. In fact, it was one of our favorite movies, by the way, when the kids were growing up. The Waltons, growing up on the Waltons.
Yeah, we watched Green Acres and Waltons and all those family friendly PG-13 types of shows back in the 70s.
The kids were all immersed in that kind of culture, and Little House on the Prairie, and
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that another
Loved
one.
it.
So yeah, and we had a wonderful time. I was the only one working. Professionally earning money. Jane was a homemaker, which was still wonderful. She had a full-time job doing that.
Right.
And allowed me to go to school, really. I mean, not only teach, but finish 3 master's degree and a doctorate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're a smart fella.
No, not smart. Just going to school a lot, that's all.
Well, that's pretty impressive that you've accumulated those accolades. I think it's something to be proud of.
Well, we had a lot of fun doing it, okay? Then when we did come to South Carolina, of course, the kids still were in public school, and Jane and I were teaching, and we got really deep involved in the counseling. And believe it or not, in the evening, we had a martial arts program. We taught, my sons and I became black belts. When we were in Pennsylvania, we came down here, in our area was no martial arts school. And so what we were doing was training at night and on the weekends and so on. And the neighborhood kids and parents and so on saw us doing this. And we started it in our backyard, in our rec room. Then my wife kicked us out of there and we went to a church, nearby church.
Right.
And for about 4 years, I had about 24 students there, and 12 of them became black belts. We later went into a rec program. We had over 700 students then for
Oh, wow.
17 years.
What type of martial arts?
That was Korean Tung Sudo.
Huh.
Sudo.
I've not heard of that.
Yeah, Korean. There's 2 major Korean martial arts that came out of Korea. One was Taekwondo, and the other one was
Right.
Tung
I took some of that when I
Tung-
was younger. Yeah.
So they're all similar, and we met lots of interesting people doing that. I mean, it was unbelievable how many people. Imagine how many students we had when we had 700 during the year. I wasn't doing all the teaching for that, by the way. Those 12 black belts that I had put them to work.
Right.
And so we had a lot of martial arts things going on,
Well, that's wonderful.
along with our regular work during the day. Our regular jobs. So
Well, as they say, I guess the grass didn't grow under your feet very well, did it?
we moved around a lot.
Right.
We were full of energy. We were young, and we were full of energy and excitement, and the kids were growing up too. They motivate you. The children motivate you so much.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we raised 4 of our own.
Okay.
And they're grown and gone, and my wife and I now have 2 dogs and 2 cats. Just when I thought we were going to be empty nesters, she loaded up the house with animals. And it's just like having toddlers in the house. You got to take the dogs out every 2 or 3 hours, and if you don't, you clean up after them, and you got to feed them and water them. And every time, if I ever want to go out of town, I've always got to figure out, well, what are we going to do with the kids? Who's going to watch them? Just like having children. But
we were loaded with pets also. In fact, as I said, that's how a lot of the books that we had. Let me show you one right there, for example.
Right.
Okay, this is Hunter, and those are Jane and I, our 2 sons, Mark and Joel. Okay, so they're mostly true stories that there was a cat we had called Cricket.
Oh, okay.
Here's one, believe it or not, a rabbit that we had once.
Oh, that's funny.
Babe, our floppy-eared rabbit.
Right.
This is a cat. Patches the cat is a thief.
Oh, wow. Cool.
We did some about our grandchildren also. Here's one about where'd the moon go. That's something one of our grandchildren said. Here's another one who needed some advice about bullying and teasing and so on. So a lot of that pet business, we just had some great stories to tell. That's how we started writing them.
So the children's books, what age group are those for?
Mostly the ones that I was holding up, mostly like 5 to about 9, I guess, about 8 or 9 years old.
I got you.
We do have some books that are middle grade. Like here's one about the key maker. This is more for teenagers. But so we try to do the whole spectrum, and then of course we have a bunch of parenting books that are coming out also. We can get into that a little bit more when we start talking a little bit about parenting and such. But it's been exciting and fun, and really quite by accident that those books came about. The 10 years of our retirement, we traveled all over the world. We built a new home in this Myrtle Beach area. So our grandchildren was involved with them, and About 5 years ago, my mother-in-law, who was in her 90s, came to live with us because she couldn't live alone anymore.
Right.
And so she was in a wheelchair and had memory problems, dementia. So that slowed everything down. And then we rolled it into COVID. That was in 21, 22. And so instead of, we couldn't go anyplace 24/7, we had to stay home with her. So we started to think about maybe we could make a legacy. We can start putting some books together and stories that were so funny and interesting, and they did teach lessons. Why don't we start doing this? So that's how we started writing, and that's been the last about 3 years now. We've been doing that.
So it sounds like the books are very relatable to people with for children of like I told you from 12 to 40, but there's parents in our group that probably have the younger children. So they sound very relatable.
Right. And grandparents also. A lot of grandparents find these things interesting for their grandchildren.
Right. So feel free to talk about your books and tell the listening audience something about them and let everybody know how they can actually find them. Or I guess they're on Amazon or whatever.
Yeah, we do have 12 already published on Amazon, and we do have 5 new ones coming out. These are the new ones.
Okay.
They'll be coming out this year. There's another one about my granddaughter and Scout, one of the dogs that they have, that side of the family has. Power Parenting is coming out, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We just done this one on cyber warriors, which is interesting. It's on cyber safety for elementary school children.
Good.
My son Joel, who is also part of this publishing team, is a DNR officer, Department of Natural Resources, a game warden. And
Good.
So he's done this one, and he's also done this one, which is for teenagers and people going into almost to their 20s, really. It's a beautifully illustrated book, a sci-fi book, Christian sci-fi book.
Okay.
So those are some of the books that are coming out, and we're having a lot of fun with that.
I would love for you to send me all that information in an email so that I can post it on my website for people to see.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, James here, James Moffitt. I wanted to let you know about our current sponsors. These people sponsor the podcast financially and help to underwrite the cost of producing this podcast. And I want to say thank you to them. So Michael Evan Blair is with whenindoubt.spinitout.com. Richard Jones is with secondstarts.com. Addiction Recovery Program. Jonathan Nall, he's the author of Final Approach or finalapproach.com. Kenny Dupar, author of Scoundrels in Iraq. Scott Yamamura, author of Financial Epiphany. Mary Toko is a vocal advocate for vaccine education and parental rights. Andrew Ryan Profashi is a cult and cancer survivor and the author of The War on Love. Melissa Crook is a podcast guest, and she is the insightful and compassionate host of the Feel, that's F.E.E.L podcast. All right. Thank you for listening to this. And now back to your feature presentation.
Wonderful. By the way, you wanted me to talk a little bit about the parenting stuff. All your listeners are, by the way, I'd love to give this to them. This is part 3 of a survival guide for parents. We have part 1. You can see that guy's having a little problem hanging onto that flagpole.
Right.
As a parent. Here's part 2. Here comes a tsunami. And he's got an umbrella, so that's not going to help. And this is ladies walking into a tornado. That's the way parenting sometimes feels.
Right.
But
absolutely.
This part 3, by the way, is, as I said, it'll be totally free as a flip book, which is nothing more than the whole book, and you click on it and it turns the page, one at a time.
I got you.
So this, I'll make sure the link comes in there so that all your listeners and viewers can have that one free. Okay.
So it's an electronic book?
I can send them both ways. It'll be like an ebook and a flip book. Okay?
I got you.
So they're all digital and everything. All they do is click on them and it opens automatically. I mean, it's right in front of them, right there on their computer, whatever.
Yeah, those are awesome resources for parents.
Yeah, and I think they might find this interesting and maybe helpful. I hope they do. But this whole adventure into parenting and so on came from basically the counseling I did in the elementary school, and I had a Christian marriage and family practice that I did on Saturdays.
Okay.
and sometimes in the summer, and when I had a lot of free time in the summertime. So we packed it all into a program called Power Parenting, nurturing successful students in the modern world today.
So a lot of your books, are they faith-based?
Yes, they are. Yes, we're not ashamed of being Christians at all, and a lot of the great advice that comes from the Bible can be shared, and certainly parenting is one of the big things that the Bible does talk about, relationships and parenting and how to treat each other, marriage, and all that kind of all that.
Well, talk about how y'all's faith integrated with your family life and raising your kids.
Well, I would say it was major. It was number one. It was major. Now, I need to say a couple of things. Jane and I were not perfect parents.
Right.
In fact, you'll notice the name of the book is not Perfect Parenting. It's Power Parenting.
Right.
There's a big difference. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. It's nice to try to be that and everything else, but that's what Christ is all about.
Wait, if you look at Facebook, there's all sorts of perfect people there.
Yeah, and on television too, I noticed.
Yeah, everybody looks like they have the perfect life, the perfect storybook life.
Yeah,
especially all the influencers, all the creators and influencers on social media.
Exactly, and it's a joke for sure. I once had a person tell me, and it's so true. Life is like running through a briar patch. Okay. You're going to get cut. You're going to get bruised. You're going to fall down. You're going to get cut, ripped, torn. And when you come out the other side, you're going to be bleeding and hurting pretty badly. No one goes through life unscathed. Okay, period. It's either disease or death or injury or problems with the world or situations with your boss or employer. But no one comes out unscathed. You're going to run into problems. And parenting is one of the biggest crucibles there is for developing your own character as a parent, not only children, but as yourself developing. And then I once heard it told that you have 3 times to grow up. Once when you're a child, the second time when you're a parent, and if you're lucky, the 3rd time when you're a grandparent. So it's a learning experience all the time. It's a character developing kind of a thing. You say, I'm sorry a lot, forgive me a lot, and you learn slowly along the way. And one thing nice about your children, though, as you well know with 4 children, it's your legacy, though.
Right.
If you want to see what your real work is all about, look at your children. What kind of children are they? What kind of grandchildren do you have? What kind of people are you helping to make? And I say helping because when we talk about a family, James, we're talking about an extended thing. And we're talking about aunts and uncles and grandparents and all the rest and the community.
Sure. Father
and mother have, the first major part, but all these other people help, don't you think?
Sometimes it takes a village.
Yeah. And, they get part of that from their schools, too. That's part of the village, the school they go
Sure.
to, the teachers they come in contact and everything. And that's why we had to write this Power Parenting, because what it was is an attempt to teach parents what they can do at home to nurture their children to be successful students in the modern world. And along the way, they develop those for their children, those character traits that are so important in school, like honesty and respect and hard work and perseverance, really the fruits of the Spirit, if you're following the Bible point of view,
Sure.
And how to keep that in your family so you don't go crazy. Family's supposed to be a place of refuge, a place of healing, a place of building up, encouragement. The world will beat you up enough when you get out there, as you well know. Whether it's your boss or employees or people or the neighbors or anybody else, you need to come home and have a place to recoup.
Well, I like to tell people that churches are not full of perfect people. Churches are a lot like hospitals because everybody that comes in is broken in some way and sick. And everybody really needs the grace. Everybody needs the healing hand of Jesus in their lives.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and my wife and I are Christ followers, and, we're not perfect. We've made mistakes, and we certainly weren't perfect parents. And one of the things we talk about on this podcast is that when you have children, you don't necessarily get an owner's manual. Yeah, no, you do. There are resources out there, the Bible, your church. Could be a great support system. Aunts, uncles, grandparents, they're hard baked into your family, assuming that those people are healthy themselves and can provide healthy support for your family.
Good point.
And you don't have any toxic relationships floating around causing damage. But so yeah, it takes a village, and I one of the things I love about this podcast is that I get to talk to a lot of, I don't want to say subject matter experts, because you know what the definition of an expert is, right?
No, tell me.
So has been drip under pressure. Expert. None of us
Okay.
are, well, on the flip side, maybe some of us are experts,
Okay.
has been drips under pressure. But anyway, so yeah, I like to talk about parenting stories. There's a lot of bad parenting stories out there, because we're all so broken, and we all have addictions that we fight with, and we came from broken homes, we came from abusive families, and there are a lot of parents out there that they're having to rewrite and undo the generational curse, the transgenerational curse of those broken homes and those addictions and those abuses that people suffer from. And so they have to, when they become parents, they have to engage some emotional intelligence and identify the problems in their lives that had those traumas in their lives that they're suffering from and need to get past and get healing, so that they can be as healthy and whole as they can be as a man and wife, and as a parenting unit, so that they can pass on healthy things and good things to their children, versus the garbage that, when we parent. Typically, we parent the way we were raised. We raise our kids the way we were raised. That's kind of hard baked into our psychology.
Exactly.
My sister and I were raised in a very abusive home life. And we were adopted in Germany, and I'm at the age of 1 and 2, and at an orphanage. And I'm so very thankful that my military family adopted us and brought us to America. And I'm very thankful that we probably had a better life than we might have had. I'm assuming, especially physically and financially, we were provided for in ways that we probably never would have been provided for at that orphanage. My parents did not understand what it was to demonstrate love to their children, and they didn't understand what it was like, or that it was okay for children to act and be like children. I was raised in the 70s and 80s and 60s, 70s and 80s. I was born in 61. Their rule was that children were to be seen but not heard, And when you go out into public, we would sit on the couch together, and we wouldn't speak unless spoken to, and we certainly were not allowed to run around and have fun or yell or do the things that children should be doing. When you're a child, you should be allowed to be a child. Now, obviously, when you make mistakes, boundaries need to be established, and you need to be taught manners. You need to be taught good behavior and things like that. But our parents wanted us to be perfect, all the way to adulthood. We were expected to be perfect. And so anyway, my story is not unlike a lot of other people, from the children, baby boomers, and, we had parents from the silent generation that, that I want to think they did the best they could with what they had. They raised us the way they were raised, and unless they had some emotional intelligence or had a support system around them that could provide them with guidance, that's exactly how they raised us, right? And so part of my purpose for this podcast is for people to hear some of these parenting stories and hear about stories that they can resonate with and understand how to get the healing that they need to get, so they can be better parents, so they can raise better, well-adjusted children that will become intelligent, wholesome, healthy, adults in society, bring value to society.
Well, I've got a story for you.
Okay.
I was born in 1947. So I'm 77 years old. My parents, my father especially, his life was kind of amazing. He was raised, was born on the way over from Greece. My grandparents were Greek. And when he came over, he was born in America, but his mother died just a month or so after he was born. And so he was tossed around. My grandfather, he was so distraught. He had 6 or 7 children, been siblings from my father. And he took 4 or 5 of them back to Greece. He was just befuddled and so on. He left the other children in America with relatives. And my father was one of them, a baby. And so he went from an aunt to another family, and finally wound up, when he was about 8 or 9 years old, with an uncle who was a bootlegger, liar, a cheat, a murderer, all kinds of things. My father helped him in the business. He said, you don't need to go to school. You help me. And so from about 9 or 10 years old to about 16 years old, that's what my father did. Stole, lied, did everything, helped out my uncle with this business. And finally, when he was about 16 years old, his brothers who were left back in America, and the other ones, by the way, found their way from Greece all the way through with the Red Cross back to the United States. So now there were all 6 of them now inside the United States. They were older. They were the older. He was the youngest one. They captured him in Woonsocket, Rhode Island at a basketball game and raised him in their own house in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Wow.
Now, the oldest brother had accepted Christ as his Savior. He was a born-again Christian. He talked to my father over and over. He knew the uncle that my father had been raised with, and he knew what he was going through. And, my father would have none of it. Okay, we just have none of it. So he went into World War II, was 4 years in the Navy, came back out, back to the uncle and so on. And in discussing with him, finally he accepted Christ as his personal Savior. Met my mother, and I was born in that situation. I asked my father once, I said, Dad, we know about your life. The uncles talk about it and so on. What a difficult life it was. I don't see you like that. You're loving, you're kind, you're helpful, you're understanding, you're patient. I said, how did you do that? He said, John, I didn't do it. It was Christ having me look at life differently. I just did what wasn't done to me. Now, that's unusual.
Sure.
That someone would have that kind of insight to be able to do that, okay? And he was very on fire for Christ, and he made sure that, we were going to church and learning about Jesus and the love of Jesus. And chapter 13 of Corinthians talks about really what love is all about, what real love is about. Let me just read a little bit of it. Paul says, love suffers long and is kind, shows no envy. It's not puffed up. It does not behave itself unseemly. It seeks not its good. It is not easily provoked, and it thinks no evil. Love does not rejoice in iniquity, but it rejoices in the truth. It bears all things. It believes all things. It hopes all things. It endures all things. So if you want a challenge, continue to grow in love with your children. This is real love. It'll not only develop them, but also profoundly affect your life. I know it did my father's, and that started the ball rolling for my sister and my brother and myself, being raised in that kind of environment. So you're right. The family does mean a lot and how you're raised.
And that's the polar opposite of what the world tells us.
Go ahead. Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Well, you know what the world's like. I mean, it's
tough.
Yeah, it is tough, and the strong survive. One of the old sayings, from my dad's era, men don't cry, and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you earn a living, and you prove your mettle by what you can accomplish, right?
Right.
And so 13, it talks about love, joy, peace, kindness, joy, gentleness, all those attributes of love that's talked about in the Bible is not something that's championed in today's society.
Oh, it's not. It's let's say running rampant in the world.
Well, I'm talking about the modern society. I'm talking about church tradition or denominationalism or the church as a whole, right? Because we know the church as a whole is sick and broken, just like we are, and there's a lot of garbage in denominations that is taught to kids and to adults. You see things that happen in church, probably your own church. I see it in my church, not so much as I've seen in the past, but there are traditions that is being taught from church leadership. You can't find it in the Bible. You look in your Bible, you don't find it. Right. And there's so many people that go to church, and they are spoon fed what the Bible says, quote unquote, or that's what they're told. But that's 1 hour on Sunday on one day of the week. The other 6 days of the week, you're supposed to be reading the Bible for yourself. You're supposed to be learning for yourself. And a lot of people, the only thing that they're getting fed spiritually is what they hear from the pastor or the teachers of their local church 1 hour a week, right? So if you're not teaching yourself, if you're not reading the Word, and you're not digging into what the Word means to you and to your life and your family's life, then what's going to fill you up? It's going to be all the garbage all the social media, the TV. I hate to even turn on local news, because it's just full of so much garbage and so much negativity about all the stuff that's going on in our world,
Right.
and politics, and just all the stuff that you and I don't endorse, and we don't believe. But that's the world, right? If you read Revelations, it tells you exactly what the world's going to be like. And I don't want to turn this into a Bible study, and I don't want to turn it into.
I think it has a purpose, though. You're talking to parents, and we're talking about some guidance for them, and so on. Really, the world's a selfish place. Okay, that's what we're talking about: selflessness and selfishness. And so you got to deal with that. I mean, you don't have to be a church. The church isn't going to save you, okay?
Right.
The church is not going to save you. There's only one thing that's going to save you, and that's Christ. Look at Christ. Don't look at the church.
Right.
So how did Jesus live? What did he say? What did he talk about? What did he stand for? What is it all about? Well, it's about love. That's what it's about, okay? Agape love. And so God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believeth in him not perish, but have everlasting life. That kind of love was selfless love. God didn't have to do that. The way Christ lived on his was selflessness. He said, be a servant. If you want to be first, be last. Be a servant. So the same kind of thing applies in a family. What do a husband and wife talk about when he gets home and he's tired? Is he putting up his feet on the couch and watching television and asking for a beer while his wife is trying to make supper? See, it's about selfishness. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Or is he, as being a servant, is he getting up there helping her? She's tired too. She worked all day. They got the children crying, one's sick. How do you relate to each other as people? Well, Jesus tells you about that. So, yeah, you're not off balance talking about these kinds of things. And that's what our power parenting is all about, is developing these kind of characteristics, okay? And why? Because you love each other. Now, if you say, I don't love my wife, or I don't love my husband, I don't love my children, well, you got a problem. Okay? He would say you got a big problem, okay?
Right.
And that is, you're not in a nice place, all right? You're not in a comfortable place, an enjoyable place. It's, you don't want to go home, okay? If you think there's some life there and there's some possibilities, how do you bring it around? Well, start being more a servant, being selfless instead of selfish. And so you start listening to your children. What's the matter with them? What are they talking about? What do they want? Who are their friends? What's going on in school? What are the subjects they're taking? You get my point? You're interested, you're involved, you're encouraging, you're passionate, you're engaged. You're engaged because you love them. They're your legacy. They're going to grow up and become, adults with children of their own. And that's going to slap you back in the face again someday. I guarantee you.
Remember the saying, latchkey children?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, mom and dad's off working. The kids have a key to the house, and they come home and they're supposed to do chores. That's what I had to do. And kids will be kids. And so kids may or may not do the chores to the level that you expect them to do. But then what do? They get into trouble.
Exactly.
They get into shenanigans, right?
Yep. We were recently in Charlotte, Jane and I, and we visited the Billy Graham Library. It was so interesting. I've read lots of things about Billy Graham and so on, and his library is a wonderful, wonderful experience. But one of his biggest regrets in his life, he didn't spend enough time with his family. He was in Switzerland one time, and his kids were, teenagers and all, and he happened to have a conference there, and Ruth took the children, went over and met him in Switzerland. They were playing on the lawn and everything. He drove up, got out of the car, and one of his kids looked to the mother and said, "Who's that, Mommy?"
Oh, wow.
She said, and he said, in his videos there at that library, his biggest regret is he did not spend enough time at home raising his children. She did all the raising of those children. And that he wished he would have asked them more questions and loved them more and got to know them more and was involved with them more and so on. Now, later on in his life, when they were adults, they all got real close then. As those kids were growing up, he had very little contact with those children. She raised those children. So my point is this, okay? You got priorities. You got to work. You got to do things around the house. You've got to, clean the toilet and wash the dishes and all that kind of stuff. But how much time are you spending with your children, listening to them, observing them, interested in what they're doing, the skills they have, involvements they have in sports or music or whatever they're doing? Who are their friends? Okay, now we're talking about power parenting. And you got to do the same with your wife or your husband. Because as soon as you lose contact with those things, it's a juggling act. It's a balancing act.
Right.
You start to lose ground. You start to lose touch. So that's just some of the kinds of things I would come in contact personally. Jane and I did also in the counseling that we did, in Christian marriage and family kind of counseling that we did, and also
Right.
the school counseling that I would run into. So most important thing you can do, James.
I like having people of faith on the podcast episodes because I want to encourage parents who may or may not have an upbringing in church or faith, or may not. I didn't become a Christian until I was like 17, 18 years old. Right.
Okay.
I was not raised in church. I know by talking with and observing people that were raised in the church and were raised in a Christ-filled home that I missed a whole lot, and I had to make up for some of those things when I became an adult. And so I know that there are parents that are listening to this that may have been raised in a secular home like I was, and maybe are not familiar with or even know how to approach faith, or even realize that you can go to church. The church is an awesome support system for parents because they have pastoral counseling. They have all, Sunday school classes that teach kids a lot of wonderful things, a lot of biblical truths. And so I want to encourage parents that are listening to this to not be afraid of engaging in those sorts of activities, and to open yourself up to the possibility of having faith in your life, faith in Christ.
Good point. Now, I would say this also. I need to say this, okay? There are a lot of fine parents out there that are not Christians, okay? They love their children. They love their wife. They love their husband. They love their families. They are showing genuine love, okay? They're showing selfless love. And that's wonderful. That's all possible. It's wonderful, and it's good for the family. So you can have a wonderful family, loving family, and so on. Now, when you start to talk about the spiritual side, because there's a lot of elements of the spiritual side that also bind your family together, make it stronger, and make you be able to get through things because you believe in something beyond the physical, that you believe a spiritual entity exists, and that we're all spiritual kinds of beings, okay? So that's another part of family life. But yes, you can be a wonderful parent by showing these fruits of the Spirit. And it's interesting, even the Bible talks about that. We love because he first loved us, okay, is the verse. And that means we have the capacity for love like Christ did and like God does because they first loved us. So
right.
we are able to love. We're lovable and we're able to love because of what God did for us through Jesus Christ. Now, again, there are so many people out there, they say, well, I have a good family and, I'm not a Christian and so on. And that's exactly possible. Okay. No doubt about
Absolutely.
That. Yeah.
So this is all wonderful stuff. So I'm going to take a couple of questions off your profile.
Sure.
It's like one of the questions is how do stories shape family values in today's society?
Well, we're great believers, obviously, in our family. And again, I don't only speak from personal experience, people that I've met, children that I've taught. Jane and I, our experience for 55 years of marriage with our children and so on is reading stories to children, little children, is wonderful. Janie did it every night at bedtime for both kids. I'd sit and listen to her read, at the bedside when I wasn't off to school in the evenings, taking college classes. But, that's why you have to have it's nice to have two people that love each other and raising children, okay? Because you need to balance each other and help each other. But she would read stories, children's stories that were wholesome, ethical, moral things. And you ask questions while you're reading the stories. Okay, now I'm talking about little kids now. They're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9, right up into that age. Children love to be read to. They love to talk about what they're reading. It gives you great opportunity to do that. Now, these days, I don't know, there should be a lot of that. There's a lot of books available, and there's a lot of good books out there.
Right.
That you can find these kinds of things to do that with younger children. With older children, you're interested in what they are reading and what they're learning and what they're investigating, what they're researching, okay?
Right.
And you have an opportunity to talk again about those kinds of things. My one grandson is going to be an engineer, okay? He's going to be his third year in Clemson. And so, they live nearby, so it's easy once or twice a week for us to cross paths and talk about what are you reading what are you studying in school right now? What are you reading? Have you read any new books? Have you read anything? What are you learning? What kind of science things are you involved? And it gives me a chance to refresh some of the science things that I might know about. And he's teaching me about things so you're sharing information, whether it came from the computer or from the book or from, you're sharing information. We don't allow the cell phones to go, when they come to visit and so on. They can do it in the beginning and everything, but then finally, when we're here to visit, we expect those things to be turned off or turned away, and we sit eye to eye talking about their lives. Don't sit there with the little cell phone, the smartphones, and watching television. Time is valuable, so we need to be able to get updated and find out what's going on and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of time for discussion about these kinds of valuable ideas and thoughts that come up in everyday life, along with books that we've read, even movies we've watched. Have you seen The Forge yet, James? The movie called The Forge?
I don't think so.
Okay, it's wonderful. It's a new Christian movie that's just come out. And
is that part of the Angel Network?
Yes.
Okay, because we were introduced to the Angel Network when we went and watched the movie Homestead. So I have a subscription to the Angel Network, and it's like Netflix or any other streaming service, but it's faith-based streaming and content. Right. And I haven't really watched any of the other shows or movies on there yet. But you said something about time, and time is our most valuable resource.
Yeah, and we only get 24 hours.
Right, and we only get so many days and so many years on this life. I mean, the Bible says that our lives are like a vapor, a season.
Exactly.
One day we're here, and the next day we're gone. It's like throwing a rock in a pond. There's waves that go out, but after a while, those waves dissipate, and then you're forgotten.
Exactly.
And our hope as parents and grandparents is that we can leave a legacy behind, and that we can leave something of ourselves that our children can carry forward. And that's one of the things I want to. That's why I like to write. I like to do photography. I like doing this podcast, because when I'm gone, my messages and my message digitally will be around for a long time after I'm gone.
Evergreen. It'll be evergreen.
That's right. And so that's what, with these books that you're writing, after you're gone, people are going to be on Amazon or wherever the books are, and they're going to find them, and they're going to go, oh, wow, that guy's not around anymore, but look at this wonderful information. And so that's what we aspire to as parents and grandparents, is to provide our children with a legacy that they can follow and they can teach their children.
Exactly. And that's been valuable for us. And we get the added benefit that we have written down so many of the stories in our books about our children and our grandchildren that they'll want to keep these things and share them with their children. Look at what Grandma and Grandpa wrote when they were alive, that kind of thing. And this is the way my father handled this situation. Look, here's his picture in the book. So yeah, for us, how we started out, James, is by writing these books for legacy, and then now it's kind of grown into other things. But Jane and I are keeping no profits from any of this, any of the books we make. We're giving it away. So we're enjoying building them, doing them, use them as a legacy, and just sharing them, and letting any profit be given away. So that's a fun thing for us too.
That's wonderful. So I want to read this from it's called Listener Takeaway that was on your profile.
Okay.
It says, listeners will gain insights into using children's literature as a tool to nurture family values while exploring ways to support their adult children with fresh perspectives on modern parenting challenges. So I always like to ask my guests at the end of the podcast. I want to give you an opportunity to do like a little 3 to 5 minute elevator speech for the listening audience. And what is your most important message you could give them?
Well, that's good. Well, the most important message I could give them would be love each other. You mentioned that time is so fleeting, and you just don't have so much of it. And it goes so quickly that you should spend most of your time being grateful, thankful, loving, kind. And if you don't find those attributes in yourself, you need to ask yourself why. Why am I not loving, care? Why am I not thankful for what I have? You came into this world with nothing. You're going out with nothing. So everything in between is extra. Is it that you're treating people in a selfish way, a nasty way? One thing I love about parenting, James, is that it's a lot like golf. Do you play golf?
No.
Okay.
I like to drive the golf cart.
You probably have seen golf, though.
Oh, yeah.
Golf
Yeah.
goes. Okay, it's not like skating, ice skating. I don't know if you've ever seen these beautiful ice skating competitions and so on, the amateurs and all, the world champ. They practice for hours and hours and days and days and days and days, and they get out there, they have 4 minutes to perform. And if they fall down, they're finished. That's it. They lost. Parenting's not like that. Parenting is like golf. In golf, you get lots and lots and lots of chances. You hit the ball the first time, it goes in the woods. That's okay. You put out another ball. You hit it again. It goes towards the green. Maybe it goes in the trap next, or maybe it goes in the woods again. That's okay. It's still all right. You set it out again. You finally get it on the green, okay, after 5 or 6 or 7 shots. That's okay. You go to the next hole, and there's another hole. You get my point? Is you have lots of chances. So don't screw up those chances. Don't goof them up. Take advantage of those chances. If you do something, if you think you're selfish, if you think you're not spending enough time with your children or your wife, start doing it. Start listening. Start spending more time thinking about other people rather than being selfish. So that would be my number one takeaway, okay? Is show love and listening at the same time.
That's awesome. There's no moment like now, right? You can
that's all you have.
You can make change. You can make a change in your life right now, today.
Exactly. You can't do anything about the past. You can't do anything about it's all about choice. Let me read something quickly from Charles Swindoll. He's in the preface of our books. He says, the longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It's more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, than giftedness or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is that we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string that we have, and that is our attitude. I'm convinced that life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% of how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. Charles Swindoll.
He wrote a book on compassion that I learned as a young Christian. That one of the sayings I've got written it's written on my heart. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right.
Well, there it is. That sums it up.
People don't care how much you know. It's not what you know. It's how much you care.
Right.
And that is something I learned as a young man in ministry. I used to be one of those hellfire, brimstone Bible thumpers, Southern Baptist Convention, old school. And I had to learn a hard lesson about compassion. A pastor friend of mine taught me about the psychology of need. And I was like, what does that mean? He said that you're going to meet people in life that they're going to be in a certain station in life, a certain situation in life, and they're going to have needs. They're either going to be hungry, thirsty, need clothes, need a job, need a place to stay. A lot of basic needs. You'll meet people day to day. They have emotional needs, they have mental needs, spiritual needs, right? And so the psychology of need is that you have to love people right where they're at. No matter where they're at, no matter where they've come from, God places you in their lives at that point, at that moment in time. And so our job as Christians is to share the love and the light of Jesus and meet some of those needs for them. In other words, it's not our job to change them. The Holy Spirit changes them. It's our job to love them and to meet as many needs as we can and as you have time to meet, right? Or help them find the resources they need to help meet some of those other needs. And once you do those things, that's how you show people that you care, is by helping them meet their needs. Like, if you run across somebody that's lost a son or a daughter or a grandparent, it's not our job to fix things. It's not our job to fix people. It's our job to love people and to be there in that moment in time and just sit there and listen. Just let them talk. Let them cry, And there'll be opportunities for you to share stories. There'll be times for you to share little nuggets of truth and wisdom from your life story, right? But I don't know where I'm going with all of that, other than to say that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And
I think we're talking about the same thing. All of this
Yep.
is the same thing, okay? We're talking about
Yep.
love and parenting and relationships, and who did it better than Christ? I mean, isn't that what he did?
Right.
When the blind came to him, or the person was
Absolutely.
filled with demons, or the woman who was a harlot.
The woman at the well. Yep.
Yeah, and the
Yep.
woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well, and so on. That's basically what he did. He listened to them, and he he could see them exactly where they were, and he loved them.
Right.
So, that's a good example. Are we going to do it perfectly? No, we are not. Okay. I certainly, believe me, my wife was the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank the Lord that she came, because she keeps reminding me, in a sense, that she loves me and cares for me, and that it's all right if I make a mistake and pick myself up again, that kind of things. And that's so, so important. We are not perfect. No one is. That's why we need Christ.
John, thank you for being on the podcast episode. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I'm thankful that you are providing those books as a resource for parents to have some extra tools in their tool chest and to be better parents and to help raise healthier children. And I appreciate all those things. And again, I'll ask you to send me an email with all the links of everything.
Free to your listeners, okay? And all
All
they
right.
have to do is click on it. They'll enjoy it.
And I'll put that in my podcast episode. I can't even think what you called it. What'd you call it?
The footnotes, I guess you would say, or the
Right. You just called it a story something.
Storyline.
Storyline. Yes. I'll put that in the storyline, and when people read it, they can click on it. So to the listening audience, thank you for the privilege of your time, as always. You can listen to the audio version of this podcast on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Public Radio. If you go to Rumble, which sounds just like it is, it's a conservative version of YouTube. If you go to Rumble, I actually upload all the video podcast episodes to Rumble, so you can download the Rumble app and you can watch it right there on your smartphone or tablet or whatever. Our website is parentingadultchildren.org, just as it sounds, parentingadultchildren.org, and I have a website. That domain points to the website, and the website provides contact information for me. You can leave me a voicemail. You can click on my email address and leave me an email, and I'll respond to it. There's a show schedule. If you go to the blog, I upload show schedules for 2 months at a time. I just released the show schedule for March and April, and I have a link on my website for reviews. So if you listen to a podcast episode and you like it, please leave a review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, I think like 75 or 80% of my listeners come from Apple Podcasts, because everybody has an iPhone, I guess. And so they can actually they can listen to the podcast episode on Apple Podcasts, and they can actually leave a review right there after they listen to it. I don't care how you leave the review, just leave one. And I want that to encourage other people to listen to the podcast. The more people, the merrier. I release a new episode every Friday morning at 8 a.m. And again, thank you for the privilege of your time. John, thank you for being here. And we will talk to everybody later. Bye-bye.
One last thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to visit our website at www.mjchanaca Publishing. That's MJChanaca.com. These are the new books that will be coming out in 2025, and we'd love to have them come and join. We actually give all our books away free 4 times a year in late March, and then, of course, in the summer, the fall, and then in the winter. If they sign up at our website, at that website I just gave you, they'll get on our list, and they'll get all our books free.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for having me, and God bless your podcast, okay? This is a great little platform, and I appreciate it so much.
All right, brother. I'm gonna stop it now, but don't go anywhere.
Please tune in next week for another episode of our podcast on parenting adult children. Please tune in next week for another episode of our podcast on parenting adult children.
If you are the parent, mentor, friend, or relative of a young adult in recovery, please listen closely for about 90 seconds. I have some very important information for you. The current treatment system has become a revolving door, relapse-ridden mess with well under a 20% success rate. It doesn't matter who's measuring it. My name is Richard Jones, and I have spent the better part of my 38-year career working with the families of young adults in recovery. Now, I am talking about young adults, 17 to 25, with substance abuse issues or trouble with the law. They may need rehab, they may be currently in treatment, or they may be finishing a detox program. They may be heading toward jail or being released soon. Most recovery programs are forced and sterile. They ignore your child's natural strengths and abilities and their biggest advantage, you. Now, the three biggest problems we can solve for your family right now. First, by accident or design, the system is built on a relapse model. It offers a Band-Aid that is designed to keep you coming back instead of killing the source of the relapse at its roots. Secondly, it's built on a model of guilt and shame in order to assign blame to you and your child instead of fixing the real problem. See, the system is financially abusive. Tens of thousands of dollars that will not guarantee one result, just a promise that you can try over and over again if you live long enough. Now, it's very important for you to understand, with the right kind of determined outcome support and a clear roadmap, you can get a relapse-proof recovery without humiliation, without guilt, or being financially abused. You can also start seeing results immediately. No more blind faith reliance on an indifferent, reluctant, or burnout practitioner. You can finally take advantage of a method that works with your young adult strengths and abilities. Let us show you the only lasting way to recovery instead of the same old failed methods that most treatment systems use without regard to result or to your family's future. If you are the type of family who will not take no for an answer, the kind of family who can't afford to lose someone they lose, please consider this: stopping the frustration and fighting right away. Exchanging embarrassment for pride and bragging, and saying no to being financially victimized with no promises whatsoever. If this sounds like the kind of recovery effort you and your young adult deserve, give us your name and best email address below for more information. You can also go to secondstarts.com, that's the number 2, NDSTARTS.com, and book a free 15-minute call. There is a better way for the people who care more.